Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. A diplomatic marathon is taking place in Brussels. First, an extraordinary NATO summit that decided to increase arms supplies to Ukraine and strengthen the presence on the eastern flank. Second, this afternoon, a meeting of the European Council and the G7 summit in connection with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The leaders of Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy and the United States and Japan agreed to impose more sanctions on Russia. During the extraordinary NATO summit, President Andrzej Duda called for, among other things, the establishing of a permanent defensive military presence on the alliance's eastern flank, increasing the number of troops and strengthening the military infrastructure. The essential task is to stop the murder of civilians in Ukraine, to stop the destruction of homes and to unblock Ukrainian cities. For me, as the president of a neighbouring country and somehow threatened by Russian imperialism, the most important thing is and will be to increase the alliance presence on the eastern flank. I am glad that everyone raised this issue and no one opposed it. The extraordinary NATO summit was attended by the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Even before the meeting, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki said that among the issues to be discussed will be the Polish proposal for a peacekeeping mission to Ukraine, which was presented by Deputy Prime Minister Jarosław Kaczynski during his visit to Kiev. On Thursday, I am meeting with NATO, G7 and European Union allies in Brussels to discuss our response to Russia's unprovoked and unjust attack on Ukraine. We remain united in defence of democracy and with the Ukrainian people. The NATO summit was attended virtually by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He asked for 1% of NATO's aeroplanes. This morning, by the way, they used phosphorus bombs, Russian phosphorus bombs. Again, adults were killed and again children were killed. I just want you to know that the alliance can still prevent Ukrainians from dying because of Russian attacks, Russian occupation, by giving us all the weapons we need. Yes, we are not in an alliance, and I make no such claims. But Ukrainians have never thought that the alliance and the allies are different, and that NATO could be afraid of Russia's actions. Jens Stoltenberg announced the NATO leaders' decision to form new battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania and Slovakia. He added that NATO forces cannot enter Ukraine due to the risk of sparking a larger conflict and thus greater loss of life and infrastructure. However, he stressed that NATO will support Ukraine by delivering anti-aircraft systems and anti-armour systems.
Allies agreed to supply equipment to help Ukraine protect against chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear threats. This could include detection equipment, protection and medical support, as well as training for decontamination and crisis management. We are also enhancing allies' preparedness and readiness for chemical and biological and nuclear threats.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reaffirmed that NATO is united in its condemnation of Russian President Vladimir Putin and committed to helping the people of Ukraine.
Despite its name, NATO is not simply a geographic alliance. It's a group of countries who stand together because we believe in democracy, in the rule of law, in the defense of human rights, in the values that underpin all of our societies. That's why this illegal, brutal invasion of a friendly democracy in Ukraine by Vladimir Putin is absolutely unacceptable. And NATO and partners around the world.
In turn, the head of the British government indicated that the United Kingdom has an obligation to help the people of Ukraine.
Already Putin is seeing that his ambition, which was to try to intimidate NATO, is producing the opposite effect, and he's getting more NATO on his eastern frontiers rather than on his western frontiers, more NATO on our eastern frontiers, as it were, rather than less. And the UK is doubling down in Estonia. We're putting a detachment of planes in the sky above Romania.
Immediately following the alliance summit, US leader Joe Biden joined European Union leaders. Discussions included support for Ukraine and its people and strengthening transatlantic cooperation in response to Russian aggression. Poland was represented by Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki. At the European Council, I will intervene very strongly on sanctions, the steps we should take against Russia and the steps we should take to help Ukraine. In addition to the extraordinary NATO and EU summits, a meeting of GU7 countries was held in Brussels. The countries were united in stressing that Russia still faces serious consequences of the invasion and the introduction of additional sanctions. We would like to consider further sanctions against Russia, and we are ready to offer more aid in addition to the $100 million in humanitarian aid we have offered to Ukraine. US President Joe Biden will arrive